The hidden gold that returned a lost son to his father's land. Deep African story. What a tragedy. A dying man carried his only son into the forest to escape a deadly disease. By morning, the father was dead, and the boy was alone in the world. In between green valleys stood the peaceful village of Oko. Oko was a place where the morning began with the crowing of roosters and the smell of wood smoke rising slowly into the sky. The villagers lived quiet and calm lives, farming the land, raising their children, and trusting the rhythm of nature. But among them lived a man whose name carried great weight and honor. His name was Alau. Alau was not just any farmer. He was the wealthiest man in the village and across the regions. His land stretched farther than the eye could see. Vast cocoa plantations covered the rolling hills like a sea of green. Palm trees stood tall across his farmland, and rows of cassava and yam filled the soil with promise. People often said that if you started walking across Alau's farm at sunrise, you might still be walking when the sun will set. He owned cattle. He owned barns filled with cocoa beans. He owned large storehouses of harvested crops. He had many slaves and workers who labored on his farms every day. From sunrise until sunset, the farms were alive with series of activity. The sound of machetes cutting weeds. The heavy thud of cocoa pods dropping to the ground. The laughter of slaves resting beneath shade trees. Everything on that land belonged to Alau. Despite his fortune, Alau was not known as a cruel man. He was firm, but fair. His workers feared his authority, but they also respected him. The greatest treasure in Alau's life was not his farms. It was his loving family. Alau had a beautiful wife named Adani, a gentle and respectful woman known across the village for her kindness. She treated everyone with dignity, even the slaves who worked on her husband's land. They were blessed with one son. A son. The boy was their joy. His laughter filled their compound every day, as he ran across the courtyard chasing chickens or playing with carved wooden toys. Whenever Alau returned from the farms, the boy would run toward him shouting, "Father! Father!" The villagers admired their lovely family. They believed the gods had blessed Alau not only with wealth, but with peace. But sometimes, when life appears most secure, destiny is quietly preparing its storm. The storm came without warning. One year, during the season when the rains should have been gentle, something strange began to happen in the village. At first, it was only whispers. A woman fell sick suddenly. Hunters collapsed without explanation. Children developed fever that refused to leave. The village herbalists tried their medicines. The elders performed prayers and appeasement. But the sickness spread. Within weeks, people began dying. The disease was unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. It struck both the young and the old. It showed no mercy. Fear gripped the entire village. People stopped visiting neighbors. Markets became empty. Even the laughter of children disappeared. One fateful evening, tragedy finally stooped the compound of the richest man in Oko. Alau's wife, Adani, fell ill. At first, he believed it was ordinary fever. He called the best herbalists. He slaughtered goats for prayers and appeasement. He offered sacrifices. But the sickness only grew stronger. Day by day, Adani became weaker. Her once bright eyes faded. Her voice grew faint. And one quiet morning, before the sun had fully risen, tragedy finally struck. She took her final breath. The compound that once echoed with joy fell silent. With heavy sorrow in his heart, Alau buried his wife. But grief did not have time to settle. Soon after her burial, something terrifying happened. The disease reached Alau himself. He began to feel the same burning fever. His body weakened. He could barely stand. And then the greatest fear struck him. His young son also showed signs of the sickness. The wealthy farmer who once commanded vast lands suddenly realized that none of his riches could save him. His barns of cocoa was meaningless. His cattle meant nothing. His land meant vanity. Death was walking through Oko village, and it did not respect wealth. So, Olau made a desperate decision. If he remained in Oko, both he and his son would surely die. Perhaps somewhere beyond the village someone might know a cure. Perhaps a distant healer might save his child. So one night under the cover of darkness, Olau gathered what strength remained in his body. He carried his small son onto his back. Without servants. Without wealth. Without dignity. The richest man in Oko fled his own village like a desperate wanderer. He walked along lonely forest paths, hoping to reach another village. But the disease was stronger than he realized. With every step, his strength faded. The journey became harder. His breathing grew heavy. His vision blurred. Still, he continued walking. Not for himself. For his son. At dawn, somewhere along a lonely forest path far from Oko village, Olau collapsed beneath a large irako tree. The boy slid gently from his father's back. Olau tried to stand again. But his body refused. He looked at his child one final time. Perhaps he tried to speak. Perhaps he tried to pray. But no words came. Moments later, the once powerful farmer of Oko village gave up the ghost. What a calamity. The man who once owned the largest land in the region died alone along a forest path. His innocent young son stood beside the body, too small to understand what had happened. The boy shook his father's shoulder. Olau did not move. The child cried. But no one answered. And so the boy began to wander. Alone. Lost between villages. With no idea that he was the son of one of the richest men who had ever lived in Oko. But destiny was not finished writing his story. Far away back in Oko village, something unexpected was about to happen. A man who once worked as a slave on Olau's farm would soon rise to power. And that man's heart was nothing like his former master's. His name was Obey. And his story would change the fate of Olau's lost son forever. Will Olau's only son access his father's inheritance? To be continued.